The word appease is a term that can be defined as making concessions to someone or something, often at the sacrifice of principles. Simply, it means to give in even when doing so is wrong. One may ask, in history, at what point has a person had no other choice but to appease? In 1938, the leaders of England, France, and Italy, along with Adolf Hitler, the Chancellor of Germany, negotiated a deal that allowed for Germany to gain the Sudeten region of Czechoslovakia without great force and little resistance. It was believed to have met all of Hitler's extravagant ambitions for land, and perhaps even more astonishing, it was believed to have avoided a Second World War. The Treaty of Versailles brought the First World War to an end in 1918. It also created a new nation called Czechoslovakia. A different treaty, the Treaty of Saint-Germain, gave Czechoslovakia a region called the Sudetenland. The Sudetenland separated the remainder of Czechoslovakia from Germany. Decades later, after Adolf Hitler's rise to power, this region would be the center of a storming conflict throughout Europe and the world. Czechoslovakia had been founded from different ethnic groups, such as the Czechs, the Slovaks, and the Sudeten Germans, who were reluctantly placed under Czechoslovakian rule as a result of the Treaty of Saint-Germain. The 3 million Sudeten Germans made up 23% of Czechoslovakia's population. The land where these people lived boasted a desirable location. It made up the western borders of the country and surrounded parts of Czechoslovakia from nearby countries. The Sudetenland also was very industrialized, so it was impacted more by the Great Depression than nearby areas. During the time of the Great Depression, it was thought that Hitler wanted to build a greater Germany. He wanted to increase living space for Germans. His ideas for the needs of living space in Germany were called Lebensraum. The citizens of Germany were easily convinced that Lebensraum was going to revitalize the once great Germany that had been brought down by the Great Depression. Another part of a greater Germany was the annexation of areas that were heavily German or of German descent. Austria was one of these areas. Austria was Hitler's place of birth and home to many ethnic Germans. The citizens were largely in support of the idea of a greater Germany. Austria was annexed by Germany on March 12, 1938. Germany was met with animated crowds of citizens, eager for the coalition of the two countries. This takeover of Austria was known as the Anschluss, the political union of Austria and Germany. Austria then became a state of Nazi Germany. The Sudetenland was their next target. Since the residents of the Sudetenland were German, Hitler didn't agree with the fact that the region had become part of Czechoslovakia. The Sudeten Germans were very reluctant to be part of Czechoslovakia as well. Hitler referred to them as those poor, tortured people, because they weren't a part of Germany. Hitler also proclaimed that he would stop at nothing, not even war, to claim the Sudetenland. War was a very sensitive subject to almost everyone, with the effects of the First World War still looming over them. Neville Chamberlain, Prime Minister of England, said that we should seek by all means in our power to avoid war, by analyzing possible causes, by trying to remove them, by discussion in a spirit of collaboration and goodwill. He himself would stop at nothing to avert a war. The threat of war is what caused Chamberlain to meet with Hitler on 2 occasions to discuss the boiling conflict over the Sudetenland. England, along with France, saw no reason for a war, and Chamberlain wanted to ensure that that wouldn't happen. Chamberlain first met with Hitler on the 15th of December in 1938. They met at Hitler's summer retreat that was located on the Austrian border. When it was made evident that a German invasion of Czechoslovakia was highly possible, Chamberlain was forced to decide to offer the Sudetenland to Hitler. When he returned to England, he worked tirelessly to convince his cabinet to take this route, and he had to convince France to accept as well. The two met again on September 22, 1938. This time, Chamberlain presented Hitler control of the Sudetenland. Hitler specified that all Czechoslovakian armies must leave the area by the date of October 1, 1938. About a week later, for 2 days in late September of 1938, 4 leading world powers at the time met in Munich at what is known as the Munich Conference. On September 28th to September 29th, Neville Chamberlain met with Édouard Daladier, the Prime Minister of France, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini, and the Chancellor of Germany, Adolf Hitler. Before he left for the conference, Neville Chamberlain spoke out to his people.
I may be able to say, as Hotspur says, in Henry IV, out of this nettle danger, we pluck this flower, safety.
The topic during this conference was to discuss the Sudetenland and Germany's plans for the expansion of their territory, more specifically, an occupation of Czechoslovakia. In the end, it was agreed upon that Germany would gain the German area of Czechoslovakia, the Sudetenland. This would have to be Hitler's last territorial demand. Czechoslovakia was also forced to hand over valuable resources to the Nazis: iron, coal, steel, and electrical power. Bewilderingly, Eduard Beneš, who was the Czechoslovakian president at the time, was not invited, nor was his government consulted about the deliberate handing over of part of his country to Germany and their ideas on the situation. Despite their lack of involvement, the Czechoslovakian government signed the deal on the 30th of September, fearful of what may happen if they must face the German armies on their own. The next day, on October 1st, 1938, the Sudetenland was invaded. There was no show of resistance from the citizens or government. Seeming as though all needs had been met, Neville Chamberlain returned to England. Here, Chamberlain was met with a remarkable amount of gratitude for his actions of being the leading man of the agreement. He was met with streets filled with people ecstatic about the outcome of the conference. He received thousands of gifts, not just from people of his home country but throughout Europe and the world. Chamberlain received awards, donations to charities in his name, even to himself, which he refused. He received flowers, letters, and telegrams, the total of these reaching near 40,000. Streets and squares were named after him, and a newspaper even started a fund to buy him a summer home. It seemed like Chamberlain had saved them all from a war, and people could not be more thankful. What the leaders who created the Munich Pact did not know, however, was that Hitler had no intention to follow through with it. The whole time, he had been lying. Hitler said, "If you tell a big enough lie and you tell it frequently enough, it will be believed." And it was. Hitler had agreed that the Sudetenland would be the last of his demands for his Lebensraum. But within 5 months of the signing, the deal was over. In March of 1939, German troops marched into the other areas of Czechoslovakia. Hitler was no longer under any terms of the agreement, as he had finally broken off from it. Neville Chamberlain's credibility all but disappeared in the following months. Almost a year after the signing of the Munich Pact, Germany invaded Poland in September of 1939. In the following days, Chamberlain announced that Britain was at war with Germany. Everything he had been working for was gone. World War II had begun. In its duration, 80 million people were killed, making it the bloodiest war in history. The Munich Pact was a failed attempt at appeasement that set the tone for future options for compromise. Its usage in the 1930s was not a success. Germany didn't have to fight for the Sudetenland. It was blatantly handed over to them. The leaders were seen as cowards who thought they did everything they could to stop war, but really did nothing at all. Today, the idea of appeasement is rarely thought of to deal with foreign matters, because of its effects and its most famous usage. As former American politician Mark Kirk puts it, the key lesson of the 1930s is that appeasement leads directly to war.